Hello and welcome to the N4A budgeting section. As artists, one of the most challenging sections of our art business can be managing our finances. While we as artists know how to create our work, we sometimes struggle with pricing, and then even more into managing the different ebbs and flows of our income, our expenses, and navigating the tax system. We here at N4A wanted to design a budgeting system that will help you estimate your expenses for the year, use that to calculate a goal that is informed by your taxes, and then make an easy system for you to track your income and see how it progresses towards your income goal. So, in the budgeting section, we start off the same. Here we have estimated expenses. If you ever are confused about our terminology, we have 4 pull-down call-out boxes that explains what, for this template, these terms mean. We divide our expenses into fixed expenses. Think of these as like subscriptions of regular payments you have to make. This could be anything from studio fees to subscriptions or regular charges. These are, we think, the easiest kind of expenses to stay on top of because they're regular. You know exactly when they're going to be and how much they're going to cost. Next, we have estimated costs. These are the normal costs you'll have in your business throughout the year that may not be as regular, but can go within a ballpark range. You understand most of the time how much your materials for your projects will be, different costs for your business, but these reoccur every year, but may come at a regular pacing. So the first estimate we're going to make is based off of these 2 expenses for the year. Then we have a second category of expenses. These are opportunities and capital investments. We use the term opportunities for things like short-term savings or investments. These are often in an art business, the opportunities that come up. Maybe it's a residency or costs for a new show or a project you want to do that's an additional cost from outside your regular business cost and practice, but are things you want to maybe set aside some money for or budget so that you're better able to tackle these as they come up. And then capital investments are more like long-term savings or long-term investments. These can often be equipment or materials for your studio. Things that, you can't usually pay for in a month or maybe even half a year. It's something that you set aside money for to save up to, and that will improve and make easier your studio practice or your professional life. So if you ever forget these terms, you can find them here in these 4 call-out boxes in the first toggle of estimated expenses. Now, down here, we wanted to make a database kind of like a worksheet. We know it's often hard to understand and estimate what expenses might come during a year. So what we have done is we split them into subcategories. So if we have 4 types of expenses, we break down fixed expenses, the longer form is fixed recurring expenses, into 4 sections: subscriptions, studio costs, professional services, and other recurring tools. So how would you use these subcategories to start estimating how much your expenses will be? Start by clicking on the subscription tab. We underline the different types of subscriptions you might have in your art business. If this subscription would apply to your art business, or is a subscription you're already paying for, put in an amount here. So say you're spending $10 a year in web hosting and paying $40 a month in email marketing, then you put it here. Remember, we want to calculate this for the year. So if you're doing $40 a month in your email subscription, then you want to multiply that by 12. This would be $480. Now remember, these are just estimates that I'm making for this demonstration. These are not the actual costs. Every one of these subscriptions or final line items in this subcategory will total up and then create the total for this category. So all the numbers you put in this estimated amount will total for this estimated total that you can see when you close these toggles. So, for example, If these are the subscriptions that you're already paying and you're thinking about adding Adobe Cloud for $200 a year, you can toggle on and off whether this number is included in the total. So you know already, if you keep your subscriptions, it'll be $490 each year. If you wanted to add a $200 subscription for the year, then you can type it in here and see how it affects your budget. This way, you can play around and adapt and see, what costs have the biggest expense on your business, on your expenses for the year, and how that will affect the income goals you need to have a sustainable business. The same thing goes here with studio costs. We gave examples of different studio costs. Then, as we have estimated expenses, how much do you spend on core materials? So paint, ink, clay, bronze. What about substrates, paper, wood, tools? If you ever find a subcategory is missing one of these line items or final expenses, you can always click new sub item, type in a description. So, if you have just a very specific amount, like you always spend the same amount of wax and you want to keep this separate, or you want to go into more detail between what supplies you're working on to know which maybe pieces you want to do, you could type in wax here. Make sure you select the right category. So if it's an art supply, all the line items under a subcategory will be the same expense. And then type in the amount, and it'll add up to the total. Here you can still toggle on to exclude it, so to take it out from the calculation, or let it stay in. For now, I'm going to delete this and move on. Once you have gone through these different sections to see what you want to include, we want you to go over to the specific views. So in fixed expenses, you can see just what your fixed expenses impact your yearly expenses. Because of where the Notion database is at and how it currently functions, you need to manually look at this number here, which is the total of your estimated total. So if the estimated total is the sum of all the specific expenses to create a subcategory, your sum here is the sum of everything in each of these main categories. You will take this number and click the Input Expense Estimator. So you'll take this number and put it here. So for fixed expense, it would be $490. Repeat this step again once you have finished estimating out the budget you want for estimated expenses, capital investments, and opportunity budgets. Once you have put all these numbers in, you can look at your income goal. We have taken, all this database does is it uses these numbers to create an income goal. So the first column is the minimum yearly income goal. What does that mean? So if the fixed expenses and estimated costs are the general costs you need to maintain your business without unexpected opportunities of residencies or other investments, just enough to keep your studio going, to make art, to sell art, this is this amount. So to get this number, the first database added this number, fixed expenses, with estimated expenses, and then accounted for 30% more than the expense. We at Notion for Artists want to make sure that you always have 30% of your income set aside above the expenses for the year. So out of the 100% of the income, 70% should go to your expenses, and 30% should be put aside so that when it comes to tax season, you will have money set aside to pay your taxes. So again, this first column is the sum of your fixed expenses and your estimated expenses, accounting with 30% more to create an income goal. Next, we have your income goal plus short-term savings. This short-term saving is what we account for opportunities. These are anything from the opportunities section. This can be professional development, residencies, special projects, or networking, like going to conferences. This is often the number you really want to look for an account. So it's not just getting by, but it's giving yourself some room to have some success, have some flexibility. Finally, this last column is the minimum yearly income with short-term and long-term savings accounted for. So these numbers, this is what you would do if you wanted to cover all of your capital investments in 1 year. Realistically, you're not going to make enough money, or you normally wouldn't make enough money to cover all of the big studio investments you want in the year. That's where, in this previous database, the exclude button will be really helpful. This is where you can play around with including and excluding different long-term investments and to see how much you would need to make with your income to be able to pay part or all of that income, all that expense in the next year. So you can toggle off, for example, here we have equipment, just general equipment. If you toggle that off, it makes this number 0. And we come over here, we replace the number, and it will give us a new income goal. So again, feel free to use this first space to figure out how much you want to budget in expenses for the next year. When you have that solidified, play around with your income goals, and then this income goal will help you have more security in the actions and the business decisions you're making as an artist. I know a lot of times we don't always know what are the numbers that need to drive our business, and we wanted to create a tool that will help make that easier. Once you have decided if you're going to focus on your minimum yearly income goal with short-term savings, or also include some longer-term investments or parts of that cost to your budget for the year, we want you to use that number to work on the next section. Next section we have is something we're calling the income stream planner. It has 2 functions. One lets you see how close you are to reaching your goal. And the other helps you figure out, how am I going to get to this income goal I've made? If you are at the stage of your business where you are only selling art, only focus on this first row. If you're only working on selling art, simply take the number you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use 1,645 point. I'm just going to round that up to 46 to make it a little easier for me. And I'll use that as my income goal. This will still show up here, and it can keep it nice and easy. If you just know you need to make that goal and you don't want to worry about it, great. You can see that in the income progress section. If you want to get a little bit deeper into the calculation, you can use your last year to help you understand how much you might make per year. So we have a first column, average sales per year. So if you know you usually sell about 5 pieces a year, and the average cost of a piece is about $200, then you know your estimated income that you usually make is about $1,000. And if your goal is 1,646, you have a couple options. You can look at your production and sales. The sales per year can be limited by one of 2 factors. It can be because you're not producing enough work and not able to sell it, or you are producing work, but you need to invest more of your time in working with galleries, art fairs, or other avenues of selling your work. One of the other options you can have is looking back up at the estimated expenses for the year. If you can't see yourself making more money with the art you're making, then maybe this is a time to look at what expenses you've accounted for and if you can cut back on anything. For a lot of us, some of these expenses might be very core. This is where we come into planning different income streams. Here, you can look at different ways to supplement that additional income. So if we know our goal is $1,646 in the year, and we're really only going to make about $1,000, then we can see if we can get that last $646 elsewhere. So let's take that amount, the 646, and see if we can get that in classes. So we're going to put the artwork to the 1,000, because if we know We should make about 1,000 with our art. Then we can account for about 1,000 in planning our income. Now we need to look at workshops. To cover the 646 in workshops, we need to figure out how much we would sell per workshop. Say, is it $40 per person? And then divide how 646 by 40. Again, not all workshops are the same. This is just an average and a simple way of trying to understand this number. There are many different ways to try accounting for your income goals, and that's its own journey in seeing what different additional income streams are best for your art business. So if I divide 646 by 40, that is 16.15. So I'm just going to say 17 to be safe. So that means to get our income goal, I would need to make 5 pieces, selling them about 200 each, and to sell 17 seats, $40 a pop, to make my income goal. Again, workshops and art aren't the only way for you to make money as a working artist. You can license some of your work. You can become an affiliate for different programs. You can see if there's any grants or fellowships to cover costs like opportunities or capital investments, and that could potentially save some money by removing or covering an expense from above. You can look at sponsorships and other avenues for additional income. While this is a little bit more of a complex system, this is a space where you can return and more comfortably engage with the numbers in your art business. Again, I know for myself and a lot of artists, it can be daunting to talk about the financial side of my art business. So remember, you are part of the N4A Circle community and have access to the 2-Degree Art community. Feel free and feel invited to come over and share any confusions or questions you have about the template, as well as your art business in the community, to help not just find answers, but to succeed together. Because in the 2-Degree Art community, success is just as far away as a friend of a friend. So I hope this section helps, and we'll look forward to working more with you in the future. One last note is that the income goal here in the income process, the reached income is a total from the finance tracking section that we'll show you in the next video. So best of luck, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.